Sahanam Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Drig and Drishya. Drishya, that which is seen. Seen means known as an object. And Drig, the seer. The seer and the seen. This is the dyad. Please close the door. This is a dyad. And what is this dyad? It's a dyad which we don't see the truth of this, which we take for granted. That the seen is as real as the seer is the cause for samsara. That I take the seen to be as real as the seer is the cause for samsara. The two do not occupy the same level or the order of reality. Yeah. The seen resolves into the seer. The seer does not resolve into anything else. Does not dissolve, resolve, nothing. That which doesn't have any alteration. That is what is called the seer. So what do I mean by the seen resolves into the seer? The seen is dependent upon the seer, number one. And then what? The seen not having its own reality. The seen is not a parallel reality to the seer. So therefore, the seen is dependent upon the seer. That is number one. Number two, when the whole Jagat, this is the model that we talk about in terms of samsara, the Jagat comes and goes. When the Jagat comes, the Atma, the I, in relation to the Jagat is called the seer. The seer is a crown that I put on in relation to that which is seen. The seen is non-separate from me, we've already seen that. And then therefore what? When the Jagat resolves, what happens? The seen resolves into what? The I alone is there. So the seer comes out of the I. Sorry, the seen comes out of the seer and resolves into the seer. In relation to the seen, the I gets an epithet, seer. That's all it is. In relation to the mind, the I gets an epithet, thinker, seer, hearer. You know, cannot say smeller, it may give the wrong idea. Yeah. So all these, you know, toucher, taster. But really the see, think, taste, touch, they all come and go. The ER is constant, that ER is I. That which is constant is I. And that I alone has to be looked at as not the seen, first level. Because this is where the confusion is. That which I objectify is as real as I. This is the only cause of samsara. This is where all the pain, the fear, the anxiety starts. And this is something which the Upanishad also reiterates. Udaram antaram kurute atatasya bhayam bhavati. Fear comes out of making a difference between myself and the other being the seen. When the seen becomes as real as the seer, samsara starts. So this mental falsification of the seen is part of the growth of the Vedanta Shastra, of learning Vedanta. So this mental falsification is what, I have to look at. I have to practice doing that. That no matter how difficult, how scary, how fearful something may look, it does not affecting me. It may be affecting the body, it may be affecting the mind, it may be affecting the senses, but I be not being just that, I being more than that, then there is something more to that. There is something more to the I than just this body, mind, sense complex. And that I, that witness, the Sakshi which we saw earlier, is unaffected, and so I always hold on to the Sakshi for strength. I, the ego here, the Ahankara, instead of identifying with that which is seen, it learns slowly to identify with the witness. It's a very important step in one's spiritual growth. Identify with the witness, and that which is seen is not as real as the seer. It's a dependent reality. And so there is one more thing which is very interesting here. If the seen cannot disturb me, and if all my problems are in the realm of what? The seer or the seen? The seen. So I grow bigger than my problems. This is very important. This is the growth. This is what is called self-growth. Bigger than my problems, I grow. And then this is what, the whole thing is. Then the other thing I said we need to focus on a little bit is Atma is not seen, I is not seen, doesn't mean that I is not known. Because some modern Vedanta gets into that kind of a thing. I heard one Swami talk, he was a guest of the ashram in Rishikesh. And he came and he said, Atma is beyond mind, okay? Beyond senses, beyond words. In fact, it cannot be talked about. And then he proceeded to give an hour and a half talk about if it cannot be talked about, then what is there to talk about? It cannot be known. It's not true that it cannot be known, it is known. It obtains as the I. What kind of I? The I that never keeps quiet, that never shuts up, that is the Atma. Aham aham iti sakshat sakshi rupena bhasate. Viveka Chudamani says. That which obtains nirantara, always as I am, I am, I am, I am, in the form of the witness of the body, the mind, the senses, everything. The I never goes to sleep. Oh, then what happens at night? Body, mind, sense complex goes to a state of, rest. But when you wake up, you say what? I slept very well and I didn't know anything. And that knowing is what is required for not knowing anything, you see? I know that I don't know anything. I know that I slept well because I know that I don't know anything. This general knowing, jnapti rupaha, jnapti swarupaha, that which is in the form of that self-shining knowing, without even an object of knowledge, that we discussed in the Taittiriya Upanishad. This is the I. What do you mean it cannot be known? It is already known. It is self-revealing. It's, but it is known enough to make a mistake. And so what Vedanta does and the texts of Vedanta do is remove the errors connected to this I. That the I is as good as what is seen. The I is limited. That errors are removed during the study, repatriating the I with its own glory. That is all that Vedanta does. So therefore the I can be known, has to be known, must be known, but not as an object. So if I don't know something as an object, how do I know it? As the truth of myself, as the subject. So this is what it is. Drigdrishyau dvau padarthau sthaha paraspara vilakshanau. Different, unique and different. But then what? Drig is Brahman here. Drig is Brahman and Drishyam is what? Mithya. Not unreal, not false. Mithya, a dependent reality. But Mithya is also Sat. Yes. Mithya cannot live without Sat. We have seen the definition of Mithya, Adhishthana Ananyat. Two definitions. One is, it is not separate from Sat. And second, it cannot be categorically said to be existent or non-existent. It comes in between existence and non-existent. It cannot be dismissed. It cannot be affirmed. These are the two definitions of Mithya. But then here, you cannot say Mithya is You cannot say Mithya is separate from Sat. Mithya is non-separate from Sat. In fact, wherever there is Mithya, Sat is not far away. Really. This is the beauty of it. This is a big relief. That whenever I look at Mithya, that's why we don't have this problem that you have to have some special God thoughts. You have to be thinking of God. And supposing suddenly I think of dog, then God goes, dog comes. You know? Then what to do? You know, oh dear, I have to keep, shaking the head off because I want to get back to God thought. Why? Because dog thought has sullied the God thought. That which is, we consider God is not enclosed by an object of thought. That which is the subject. It is not enclosed by a thought. And so therefore, wherever there is mithya, so even when the mind goes and thinks about God, it is with itself, and if the mind focuses on dog, then also dog is not away from God, and not just in spelling, even other ways, because everything is Brahman alone. And here, even though it says Drik Brahman and Drishya is Mithya, Mithya is Sat, but very important, Sat is not Mithya. This is the difference, this is the problem. So this Mithya, this variegated, this manifold variations, Nama Rupa, name and form, various trees, so many jatis, so many species, so many manifestations, but all of them arising from, sustained by and resolving into that one consciousness, that one non-dual consciousness. The meaning of the word I does not resolve into any of them. That's all. Clear? Say yes.
Yes.
If there are questions, we'll have some time later. Then how is that if the question arises? There may be immediately a question. How come Sat is Mithya? Mithya is Sat, but Sat is not Mithya. How does that happen? The next verse explains a little more. Avidyopadhiko jivaha
Avidyopadhiko jivaha
Mayopadhika ishvaraha
Mayopadhika ishvaraha
Maya vidya gunatitaha
Maya vidya gunatitaha Iti Vedanta Dindimaha. So, now there are two other things, correct? Drik Drishya, and then Jiva and Ishvara. This is another silent dyad. It doesn't start off by saying there are two things and this is one is Jiva, one is Ishvara, but it is said here. And so how from seer and seen we went to Jiva and Ishvara? This is a very interesting connection. Yeah. We talked about seer. The seer is what? Brahman. And we talked about seen, and the seen was dismissed according to this text as Mithya, not to be taken for the Sat, not to be confused for the Sat. And then what? Who is the seer? Jiva. You can say I, yours truly, Jiva. Who else? I am this Jiva. And as soon as you say Jiva, what happens? A sad personal rain cloud forms atop the head. Yeah. It doesn't even rain all over the town. It rains only, on top of the head. As soon as you say the word Jiva, full of peeves, sad, suffering from alienation, suffering from all kinds of problems, this limitation, Jiva. Jiva is Ishvara with ignorance, that's all it is, really speaking. And that's what this verse is going to show. So this sad sack, Jiva. So then you say Ishvara, and then you say, oh, most people start looking up, thinking somewhere up in heaven, and you start going like this. And if you're South Indian, you start going like this. This is your atoning for all omissions and commissions. Why that? You're supposed to be punishing yourself a little bit, not too hard. It's a token self-flagellation. And then you look up, This is the height of ignorance, really. And so therefore, this is the word Ishvara is awe-inspiring, fear-inspiring, and inspires a certain separation. Locally not available, therefore I have to look up, somewhere beyond space, beyond time, beyond something not available locally, but somehow who's got so much power. The word Ishvara itself means the ruler, the overlordship, the one who has Aishwarya, power, limitless power. So this fellow is not available locally, and then what? Has a rule over my life. And I am told that every single thing that happens is because of Ishvara. Oh dear, So this is the jivas. This is what I meant by personal rain cloud. So how does Ishvara rain upon this poor jiva? In the form of karma, karmic rain, Sometimes it is acid rain, sometimes it's a hurricane, and sometimes it is all kinds of, sometimes it's a drought. Looks like rain but never does. Sometimes it's this maddening 3-day drizzle, cannot make up its mind whether it should rain or shouldn't rain. This is the karma in the lot. And in between little pieces of sunshine will be there. Enough to keep the jiva going, that's all. And so the word jiva, fills one with a certain dread and abject misery. And the word Ishvara also equally fills one with dread, because this is the person, some guy in the sky controlling my life. This is what is the non-understood Ishvara is a cause of fear. And as we see in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna in all aplomb says, show me your true self. Krishna says, okay, no problem. You think you'll be able to handle it? Yeah, show me your true self. And he sees all kinds of people who are not following dharma are being hoovered into the mouth of the Lord. He sees that. He sees a majesty that he cannot tolerate. He sees a brilliance he cannot even. He is shaking in the face of this brilliance. And he sees, all kinds of things, and he is filled with fear and remorse. Quickly he says, we used to be friends, and in friendship I may have said a few things and taken a few liberties. Please forgive me. He starts doing this. Ahara nidrashaya bhojaneshu. When we were sleeping, I might have, thrown some water on you. We were friends. And then I might have, when we were climbing mango trees together to steal the neighbor's mangoes, I may have run off with your share. I may have done so many things, but now I see who you really are. Oh, please forgive all these omissions and commissions. And also one more request. Krishna says what? Can you come back to your original form like right now? Right now, please. Because I'm not used to this. Why did he get scared? Why was there fear? Separation causes anxiety. Separation. And that separation alone is what is the cause of the lot of the jiva, ignorance. And so here, the seer, if as soon as you say seer and seen, if the seer, immediately one comes to the conclusion that the seer is the jiva, then this is what is going to be, leads to a different kind of a dyad that needs to be dealt with. The seer is not the jiva. Seer is Brahman. And who is this jiva? Who is this Ishvara? Let us look at, first we'll translate the verse and then we will look at it. So the Ishvara and jiva have gone to the tailors for a fitting. Yeah. Ishvara and jiva have visited a tailor for getting custom-made garbs, clothes. Then what happened in this story? The tailor, whose name is Maya, tailor went and made a very grand robe for Ishvara. In fact, without the God, Ishvara is not Ishvara, really. So even though we say Jiva and Ishvara went for a fitting, it reminds me of that poem, The Walrus and the Carpenter. Meaning two unlike people walking on the beach and feeling very sorry for those oysters, And the walrus, I think, eats all of them or something like that. Anyhow, so the thing here is that, really speaking, you cannot say Jiva. I have to edit the story as we go along because of the layers of complexity in the story. So the first line of understanding is Jiva and Ishvara went for a fitting to the tailor named Maya. Maya's shop, And then the second line of, going a little deeper into the story is that Jiva and Ishvara, as though two, but really speaking, Brahman went for the fitting. Yeah. That infinite consciousness went to said, I think I need some clothes. I'm just what? I'm not wearing any clothes. I think I need some clothes. I need to have some dresses made. And Brahman commissioned 2 dresses, 2 sets of clothes. One set Maya made completely grand with all kinds of sequins and baubles. The baubles were in the form of planets and galaxies. That is the decoration. And Brahman wore that and said, yeah, this is really fine. Now, with this dress on, I am called what? I have power, I have the scepter, the crown, everything. I can rule the whole universe. Now let's see what the other dress looks like. And the other dress Brahman put on, it was full of tatters, sewn with teardrops instead of the planets as the baubles. The sequins in the Jiva's dress is teardrops. Tear and sweat, that's all. Sad. And then what? And Brahman said, oh no, what happened now? Now I am a Jiva. Now I am in the spell of all that is grand because I am so alienated, so separated. So these are the 2 upadhis. Upadhis means dresses. Same Brahman, same person is wearing 2 kinds of clothes. So Brahman goes into what? Maya's tailoring, Maya's shop. And Maya has sewn a beautiful gown that Brahman wears and says, what? Bahusyam prajayeya. I think I'm going to become many. I think I'm going to create this whole universe. I think I'm going to be non-separate from this universe. I think these are the people's karmas. This person over here is got this kind of karma and that person has that kind of karma and this is what is happening, this is what is going on. I think I'm really excited about all this. So Brahman gets, excited. In what? Ishvara costume. And then Maya says, here, try this on. What is this? It is, it's like the teenagers' jeans. More holes than jeans. Yeah. Cannot be called holier than thou. Yeah. So this is in tatters, full of, like threadbare clothing. Like I said, it's got a border. What is like we have all the, goddess fabric, we have borders. What is the border for the Jiva's clothes? Tear and sweat drops. Yeah. This is the border. Sad things. And Brahman says, okay, I think it will fit me. I think I'll try it on. And then what happens? Brahman says, oh no, I don't know what happened. And Brahman, identifying with the costume, calls itself Jiva. This is what it is. Yeah. When the costume becomes real, then what happens? Then the show also becomes real, right? You forget you're an actor The show becomes real. And so this is what is the difference between Jiva and Ishvara. What is the difference? No difference. The same Brahman walked into Maya's shop. Maya is the super seamstress. Yeah. Very skilled. And that's why in Sanskrit we have a verse describing Maya. Aghatita ghatana patiyasi Maya. Patiyasi means you clever Maya, you. Aghatita ghatana. You make even Brahman cry with ignorance. That's not the translation. Aghatita ghatana means you make those things come to be which are not even non-existent, you make existent. The existent you make non-existent. Because what is existent? Aham, I. And that I, which is Satchidananda, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, is forgotten. Why? Because the non-existent becomes more existent than the existent. Are you with me?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, so this is what is the problem. So how did I get into samsara? How did I become the jiva? You went to the wrong, you tried on the wrong dress. That's all that happened. You went to Maya's tailoring shop and put on the Jivik costume rather than the Ishvarik costumes. That's all it is. And so you see, therefore, the Mahavakya, the teaching is not that you are Brahman. That I know, that which obtains in the body, mind, sense complex, that relative Sakshitvam is there, I know that. But the teaching is you are Ishvara. That's what is the teaching. Because otherwise, Brahman means what? That the teaching is to be complete, because from the place of abject hopelessness, abject non-courage, fear, pain and sorrow and total disappointment with myself, I am equated to the grandest thing that there is. That is the equation. So the equation is you are Ishvara. And so let us look at the verse. So here, avidya upadhikaha jivaha. Same thing. Upadhi means, it's translated as limited adjunct. I don't know why. Yeah. Yeah, I think many people find it difficult to understand. So, upadhi means it's like a crystal, like if you take this, let's pretend this is crystal. And then if you put this orange behind the crystal will look orange. Then you put some other color, then you put white, the crystal will look white. But the crystal is neither orange nor white, that is the idea. So, Brahman is what? Neither, the Ishvara is a status attributed to Brahman. So the status of being Ishvara is mithya. Don't think it is real. The status of being a jiva is also mithya. The Sanskrit words are jivatvam and ishvaratvam are both the product of the fine seamstress ability, tailoring ability of Maya, who sews these beautiful dresses for Ishvara. And Jiva keeps Jiva in a tattered garb. And the tattered garb is nothing but ignorance. And the fine garb is all knowledge, shining with knowledge. So the only thing that keeps oneself from the whole is ignorance. That's all it is. And so the Jiva is really, don't say Jiva is mithya, Jivatvam, the status of being Jiva is mithya. The status of being Ishvara also mithya. And so here, avidya upadhi jiva, upadhikaha jivaha, maya upadhikaha ishvaraha, maya avidya gunatitaha iti Vedanta Dindima. So then what is this Brahman? It is that which transcends Maya and avidya both. It is neither conditioned by Maya nor conditioned by avidya. That is what I am. This is the proclamation of Vedanta, that infinite consciousness. And what is this Maya? This tailor of, Jiva and Ishvara, the one who keeps measuring them for fittings. Who is this Maya? Is this Maya a parallel reality? The answer is no, because there is nothing other than Brahman. So then if the Maya is not a parallel reality, Maya is what? Also a product.
What kind of product? Kalpita product and as though product, a mithya. Maya is herself mithya. It's the power to create, the power to sustain, and the power to take back. This mythical power of Ishvara, of Brahman really, is called Maya. That all knowledge and all power is called Maya, which equips Brahman with the status of being the Lord of everything. And that same all knowledge and all power translates into abject ignorance and poverty, for the jiva. Powerlessness, poverty of power. Scarcity, poverty, fear, sorrow, which becomes the lot of jiva, it translates into that. And why does it translate into that? Because there is an identification with that. Yeah. So the jiva is on the other side of Maya. So you have you have Ishvara, Maya and Jiva. So the same Maya that makes Jiva ignorant, makes Ishvara all powerful and all knowledgeable. The same Maya equips Brahman with all knowledge and power, and this is called Ishvara. The same Maya equips this Brahman with the identified with ignorance, which is called Jiva. And so the Maya, as we have seen, has two kinds of Shakti's powers. The power to conceal the truth of myself from me, and the power to project what? The one into many. It's all as though. So the projective power is not, the projective power you cannot transform really, because it is called Ishvara Srishti. So many trees, so many this. And people ask the question, if I know I'm everything, will I become a tree? People have asked this question. Will I become one with everything? Will all the duality disappear? The duality need not disappear. The duality here has to disappear. The duality outside doesn't have to disappear. And how does the duality within disappear? By taking care of that avarna. That covering of ignorance has to be dismissed through the teaching. That's all there is. Nothing more. And so, therefore, next door? Never mind. So therefore, we have to get to the place of seeing these garbs for what they are. It's the same I, that infinite consciousness. And the power to create, the power to sustain is a power that comes and goes really. Because when there is no creation, what is there to sustain? What is there to resolve? What is there to create? Nothing. And similarly, the jiva's powerlessness is also as though it is not real. And this is where the resolution has to take place. Because when the seen becomes bigger than the seer, that is the cause of samsara. And when Ishvara is not understood as the truth of oneself, that is the cause of samsara. When the jiva continues to be in the abject, what is that? Nidra, sleep of ignorance, that is the cause of samsara. Next one. Sakarancha nirakaram.
Sakarancha nirakaram.
Nirgunancha gunatmakam.
Nirgunancha gunatmakam.
Tattvam tatparamam brahma.
Tattvam tatparamam brahma.
Iti Vedanta Dindima. This is interesting because now if the focus is on Brahman, not the wearer of the garb of ignorance, not the wearer of the garb of all knowledge, but the focus is on Brahman, the one who wears, not the garb itself. And then what is this Brahman? Is it Sakara? Sakara means Akarena saha vartate iti Sakaraha, means that which has a form. Is it Nirakaraha or does it have no form? Is it Gunavan? Does it have qualities like Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, etc.? Sthula, Sukshma.
Or is it gunatitaha? Is it free of attributes? These can be the questions. This can be the question. Is Brahman formless? And if I say yes, then what will happen? What about all the things with form? Are they Brahman? Are they not? Things with form are also not without the presence of Brahman. And so Brahman, if you say formless, then what happens? Even though that's true in a certain way, but in terms of the dyad, in terms of this formless dyad, then if I choose one over the other, I say Brahman is formless, then there is an abject dismissal of all the things with form as though they are outside of Brahman. Name one thing that is outside of Brahman. Nothing. You cannot name, right? And so therefore what? So then if I say Brahman is, forms, all forms alone is Brahman, because you have to think like the text. It is presenting everything in the duality. So then if you say Brahman is everything that has form is Brahman, then Brahman becomes a list of names and forms. And the list, even though it is a big list, still is finite. And so what about there is a loss of infinity here. The consciousness has just become finite. So that also will not do. And nirgunam, free of attributes. Then what about all the things that have attributes? That is also non-separate from Brahman. So then if I say, okay, all the things that have attribute are Brahman, then I am leaving out the things, that Brahman is free of attributes. So in terms of this dyad, if we look at it, you cannot categorically try to pin Brahman on a particular category, on a particular attribute or the lack thereof, because as the second line tells us, what does the second line say? Tattvam tat paramam. Tattvam means the truth. The truth is what? Is tat paramam brahma. The truth is that which is beyond forms and names. Then if it is beyond forms and names, then what is the name? What is the form? What are the categories? That which manifests as the form, which is itself without form, that which manifests as the word, which is itself beyond words, that which manifests as all names, which is itself beyond names, that is Brahman. How does it manifest like that? Just like the dream. In dream there is a certain diversification of what? Of your own knowledge, your own memories. And your own memory and knowledge, that consciousness is bifurcated in dream. The dreamer is seen as separate, and in the dream all the things that are moving and non-moving are what? You alone. Your own knowledge creates them, and then the dream folds up into the waker, into that waking consciousness. And here what happens? We are easy and eager to dismiss the dream, right? We are eager to dismiss the dream. We say, that was just a dream. But what the Mandukya Upanishad posits is that the day you are able to have the same cognizance of the waking experience as the dream experience, the way that the day you are able to falsify the waking experience just as you falsify the dream experience, that is what is knowledge. Because we prioritize the waking experience over sleep and dream. But that waking experience is also equally subject to falsification. All the waker and the waking experiences is also an aropa, a superimposition upon that infinite consciousness. And so here, everything resolves into the waker in the worldly, everyday reality. Everything resolves into the sleeper, resolves into the waker, the dreamer resolves into the waker, and you say, this is the real reality. But from point of view of that vastu, of the tattva, of the truth, the waking reality is also subject to falsification. Because how come we are prioritizing this? And this is where what is called turiya, the fourth experience they call it. It's not an experience, it's the truth of oneself. The one that inhabits the waker, that inhabits the sleeping person and the sleep experience, the one that inhabits the dream and the dreamer, the one that sustains all that, the one which is free of all that. This is what is called Turiya. It's not a special experience, it's the content of the dreamer, waker and sleeper, and the one that sustains all of them without being any one of them. So even in the waking world, one, progresses as though one uses the same methods of falsification as one does in the dream. This is very important. You have to learn to do that slowly. It's a very good practice. Difficult, but this is where the teaching is taking ourselves. Then, how to wake up to this knowledge and truly deserve this knowledge is discussed in the next one. Dvijatvam vidhyanushthanat
Dvijatvam vidhyanushthanat
Vipratvam veda pathatah
Vipratvam veda pathatah
Brahmanyam brahma vijnanat
Brahmanyam brahma vijnana
iti Vedanta
Dindima.
So the word Brahmana is taken here. Brahmana, the derivation Brahmani charati iti Brahmana, the one whose life is dedicated to Brahman. So how can I become a Brahmana? This is the question, the unanswered question here. How should to become a Brahmana here? And then, so there are many ways. One is you learn the Gayatri mantra. You get initiated into the Gayatri mantra, And then this initiation ceremony also is accompanied by a thread, and the thread is put over the left shoulder, and then the person is declared to officially now be a student of the Veda, and you can, you are now, the ceremony is called Upanayanam, being taken to the knowledge, and so that is one way. This is called Anushthana, through undergoing the ceremony, and they have a party, and of course everything involves food, and so there is lot of food and lot of cheer, and this is done when the child is generally about 8 years old. That's the first mantra that is taught. And the mantra is very interesting. The Gayatri mantra is about making the correct choices, because this is where one needs help. Because all the problems are in making wrong choices. And so may I be in the right place, at the right mind, and at the right time with the right mind to make the right choices. Because one wrong choice can destroy the whole life. So it's interesting, the child doesn't ask for brains, money, knowledge, no. The child is taught to ask, Dhiyaha naha prachodayat. May my mind be worthy. May my mind be worthy of making the correct choices. And the prayer is to that self-effulgent consciousness, please help me make the correct choices. It's a collective prayer. May our minds make the correct choices. So the children pray like this. So that is through the ceremony one can say, now I am officially a Brahmana because I am entitled to study the Veda. See, I have a certificate. Where is the certificate? I wear it on my shoulder. That is there. It's a different kind of certificate. Non-papyrus certificate. It's a thread certificate. And so this is my entitlement to study this knowledge. This is what one can say. But does that make you really a Brahmana? Vedanta Dindima says, no, you don't. If everybody became a Brahmana just by Upanayanam, by undergoing this sacrament, like a rite of passage or a sacrament where you take on the sacred thread and chant the mantra, if everybody became close to Brahman and a Brahmana by that, moving in Brahman by that, then there is nothing more to do. But that is not the case. That is in fact just an initiation to the study. And then what happens? You study the Veda. Of course, this is the first portion, but that is, you have to begin the study somewhere. And then after you graduate, if you have studied well, you are called Vipra. Vipra means knowledgeable. You have become a Pandit now. You are really good at this, and you know all your, and if there is a Veda quiz, Isha Bhasyamidam Sarvam, where does this come from? Ishopanishad. Okay, that's good. Kene Shitam Preshitam Patiti Manaha. Oh, Kenopanishad. Oh, those two were easy. Okay, so because the first word is the name of the Upanishad itself. That's cheating. So and so if the Veda quiz is given, the person quickly answers. And so that person who has all the mantras in the head is called what? Vipra. Vipraha. Okay? But does that make the person a Brahmana? Not according to the Vedanta Dindima. And then what? Then Brahmanyam, the true Brahmanatvam, or the true status of being a Brahmana, that is awarded only when you have knowledge of Brahman. Brahmajnanat eva Brahmanya iti Vedanta Dindima. So the status of being Brahmana is not for those people who can throw a big party and have some kind of a elite ceremony of having a sacred thread and chanting a few mantras. The status of being Brahmana is not for those people who can spend 12 years memorizing all the Vedas. The status of being Brahmana is not for anybody who does any of those things which are prescribed by the Vedas. The status of being a Brahmana, Brahmani Charati, the one who is always with Brahman, is the one who knows I am Brahman. That is so. Only through this knowledge one gets a certificate that outlasts all other certificate. Because the giver of the certificate is you, and then the one who is graduating is you, the cap is you, the gown is you, and the subject of the study is you, everything is you. So this is the ultimate graduation, knowing which, graduating from the school of Brahman. You don't need any other embellishment. You don't need to then pack up a resume and find a job. What will you put on your resume? I know Brahman. Who's going to give you a job? No one. But you won't need a job. Why? Because you are fulfilled in yourself. So whatever you do, there is no struggle. There is no struggle. Gaining which knowledge, everything is as though gained, and you are able to freely live is what is called here. This is the message of Brahmanyam, this is the message of Vedanta Dindima. Sarvatmana sthitam Brahma.
Sarvatmana sthitam Brahma.
Sarvam Brahmatmana sthitam.
Sarvam Brahmanana sthitam.
Sarvam Brahmatmana sthitam.
Sarvam Brahmanana sthitam.
Na karyam karanad bhinnam.
Na karyam karanad bhinnam.
Iti Vedanta Dindimaha. Yeah, Sarvatmana sthitam Brahma. So here, this is an attempt to quell the dyads, because the dyads are put up, as we saw, as a mechanism of this text right from the beginning to dismiss the latent dualities, the reflecting dualities which are already there in the mind. So the dyads are a way of teaching. You first split the thing into two because that split is already there and it's sensed by the mind. All kinds of splits. Jagat and Jiva split, Jiva, Ishvara split, Jagat, Ishvara split, everything is split. Inner split, outer split, So these splits are already there in the mind, and they are highlighted to show that, to show their falseness, and to show that they don't have a being, and to dismiss that. To dismiss one as mithya and the other to uphold that. So the split between Brahman and non-Brahman, so all these things, samsara and Brahman, all these things we have seen. Then the writer doesn't want you to go away with the idea that only the creator is Ishvara, is Brahman. And what about the created? Brahman, The writer doesn't want you to make that mistake. The writer now is going deeper into the teaching and says, Sarvatmana Brahman, Brahma, Sarvatmana Sthitam, Sarvatmana, third case, which means what? In the form of everything, this Brahman is. Sthitam, abiding. So, truly all these dyads which we had created, don't worry, there will be more, but right now. So, truly all these dyads that we had created was just for the ease of your own understanding, because those dyads reflect certain latent and and not so dormant dualities within your own mind. And so we created that dyad to show which is true, which is false, to dismiss the false and uphold the true one. Now the time has come, speaking of the graduation ceremony, to graduate into understanding, to graduate from Vedanta 101 to Vedanta 201. And what is that graduation from Vedanta 101 to 201? To apprehend, to understand, to comprehend this fact that even though the scene was dismissed earlier, the scene is also what? Non-separate from Brahman. See here, non-separate from Brahman. See here, scene split, non-separate from Brahman. So everything is Brahman alone. Sarvatmana sthitam Brahman. That which is everything, that which abides in every single thing is Brahman. That's why in India we say Kana Kana mein Bhagavan hai. That Ishvara is there in every grain of sand. In every grain of sand. And this is a sentiment that was expressed by the Romantic poets. You find this. You read Wordsworth, who becomes so overwhelmed and devotional on seeing some those yellow flowers. What are they? Daffodils, yes. And then you see that in Walt Whitman, you see it in so many, in Keats, in Shelley, Byron, all those people. They had this understanding, it's something that can be sensed, that everything that is here is holy, sacred, and not without the presence of that which created this. So something very beautiful. And so you find this, there is, and speaking of grain of sand, there is one poem, I'm not recalling the words. Does anybody know? Heaven is in a grain of sand or something like that. Something is, heaven in a wildflower. You see something, whatever that blank, in the grain of sand, and heaven in a wildflower. This Walt Whitman writes like this. Very beautiful. Yeah, somebody can look it up and tell me. And to see heaven in something, in the wildflower, but something else in the grain of sand you could see. And it was very beautiful to contemplate on these poems from knowing Vedanta. It gives a wonderful meaning to those, to that poetry. So here, Sarvatmana Sthitam Brahma, that which is already sensed, that all this here is one, is something keenly sensed. And the poets are much more sensitive people, So they take the time to render their expressions of what they have sensed and share it with others in a very beautiful way. So here also, this one says, Sarvatmana Sthitam Brahma. Everything that is there, animate and inanimate, small and big, sentient and insentient, moving and non-moving, is not without the presence of Brahman. It is holy. It cannot be, because Brahman, everything depends on Brahman. So this is what Brahman is. So all that is here, known and unknown, that which has a name, doesn't have a name, is Brahman alone. And then so therefore what? Sarvam, all that has its, that Sarvam means what? Everything. Everything that is existent, the existence of everything is what? Brahman alone. So we've done this many times. So if I say flower, well, here. This, what is this? Bush. So flower is. So if I say flower is, bush is, the is doesn't belong to the flower. Is belongs to what? Brahman. So the flower is shines in a borrowed is, in borrowed existence. Much like the crow who snuck its way into the peacock convention. It was an exclusive convention. There was a board, peacocks only. And underneath was written, no crows allowed. Oh, no. What to do? And the dancing peacocks had discarded some of their feathers. And the crow, being very clever, crows are very intelligent. What did the crow do? Stuck them on with some cello tape, scotch tape. And then started to dance, went into the convention and started to dance, correct? And after a little while, what happened? It forgot itself. And it did all the moves. And then the peacock started to break dance. So it also did moves. And then what happened to the feathers? Gone. It was pecked out of the convention. Right? Yeah. So similarly, if the rose starts to think, the existence belongs to me, it's borrowing the existence like the crow borrowed the peacock feathers. So everything that is here is on borrowed time, borrowed existence, is starting with one's body, borrowed, mind, borrowed, like Swiss cheese, holy mind. If not borrowed, it is borrowed. And so mind, senses, flower, everything, power, everything is borrowed, borrowed, borrowed. The moment I start thinking it is my own, what happens? Brahman says, no, give me back the copyright. This is what the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is, the reclamation of copyright. Bhagavan says, if you sing well, don't think it's you. It's me. It's me in your voice, sitting in your voice box. If you do something well, it's not you, it's me. If you do, if you cook well, it's not you, it's me. It's not you, it's me. So the intellectual property rights are reclaimed. They all rest in that Brahman alone. And so if the body says, I am existent, if the body were to say that, Brahman will say, no, that's me. That's not you. So this is Sarvam Brahmatmana Sthitam. And then what? So what is this Brahman? Now categorically I want to know. You've been confusing me with all these nice words. Everything is the crow and the peacock and one existence and all this. Forget all these fancy things. Tell me, is it Brahman, is it cause? Or is it the effect? Effect meaning the Jagat, the world, the manifest world. Is it cause or is it effect? What should be the answer?
Sure.
Neither. That which is non-separate from the effect. That which is as though manifest as the cause when there is an effect to reckon. And that truth which is manifest differently as the cause and the effect, but whose truth is what? Neither cause nor effect. Beautiful. So that truth is beyond cause and effect. The cause and effect are statuses that come and go. When you say cause, already you have brought in time. You see? So even the status of cause, only when in relation to the effect I can say the cause was caused, became cause at this particular day and time. And the evangelist thinks it was 6,000 years ago that Brahman became cause. They won't say Brahman. Brahman, not Brahman. So they will say the world started 6,000 years ago. Whatever the date is, doesn't matter. So if Brahman is we say Brahman is the cause, even that has a certain patina of what? Finiteness, because the cause means it started. When the effect is created, then the cause comes into being. And before that, what was Brahman? No cause. No cause, no cause. So therefore we cannot say categorically it is the cause, because it is a relational status. Then again we cannot say it is categorically the effect, because we have seen the effect means what? We only say that which comes to an end is effect. Yeah. cause cannot be without the beginning, effect cannot be without the end. So when you say cause and effect together, we are looking at a time bound happening. And that time bound may span many yugas. Kali Yuga, this Yuga, that Yuga, or many cycles of time. But it is still a time bound happening. And so therefore what? Therefore, we have to understand this very, very properly, is that this cause effect is another secret dyad in the head. Yeah. So that which manifests when there is an effect to reckon, when there is this happening called the Jagat, then you say Brahman is cause. And then when there is the Jagat to be reckoned, you say Jagat is not separate from the Brahman. So, but truth is neither cause nor effect, Brahman is. It is its own self. Now what is its own self? Can you please explain what this self is? Satta Spurana Saukhyani Bhasante Sarva Vastushu Tasmat Brahmamayam Sarvam Iti Vedanta Dindima. Yeah, this requires a little time, so I will take it next time. I just translate it. Satta, existence. Spuranam is the ability to be sentient. The quality of sentience is called Spuranam. And Saukhyani. Saukhyani means the ability to be pleasant. Yeah, Asti Bhati Priyam. We have done this. Asti, existent. Bhati, shines. Is an object of knowledge. Priyam, which is dear. So these three things, we can't call them attributes. These three things are what? Definitions of Brahman. In other words, what? Satyam Jnanam Anantam. Sat Chit Ananda, same thing. So Satta is Sat. Then what is the other one? Spuranam is Chit or Sat, and then Priyam is Ananda. What is Priyam called here? Saukhyam. Saukhyam is Ananda. So Sat Chit Ananda is Brahman. And this exists, and then that which is existent, that which is knowledge, knowable, and that which is limitless. Here, that which makes me pleased. But there are so many things in the world that don't make me pleased. What are you saying? It makes me pleased. I'm ready to be displeased at hearing this, that it makes me pleased. Well, absence of those things make me pleased, right? Yeah. Absence of wild animals, tiger, wolf, all those things make me pleased. And if I see the tiger in its own sanctuary, I can say, how nice, I'm inside the jeep. I'm going to call this a safari. And you are outside, I can enjoy you in your own place. So like this, the pleasing also comes from keeping certain things at bay. All those things we will see next time. That's why I said we cannot, it's a longer discussion. So what this Brahman is, if it is not cause, effect, and if it's neither cause nor effect, then what is it for itself? So to bring in the crow again, the first verse 34 has to do with what? Tatastha Lakshana of Brahman. What is Tatastha Lakshana? The definition of Brahman that comes and goes, much like the crow sitting on the classroom or the house of your friend. If your friend moves and you don't know where she or he has moved, and you go and somebody tells you just that house where the crow is sitting. So next time when you go visiting, you will look for the crow? No. The crow has done its job. Similarly here, the Jagat is the crow to give Brahman the definition of a causality, cause-effect. And when the Jagat is not there, what is Brahman for itself? It's called Swarupa Lakshana, its definition for its own Swarupa, its own nature. And that is going to be discussed at length in verse 35, and how that is communicated and all we will see on the 2nd of March. Saturday, 2nd of March. What time?
9:30 Western time, Pacific time. So I will stop here and we'll spend a few minutes in questions if people have questions. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Questions? Yes.
While you were gone, I was reading the Swamini Svatmavidyananda.
Home study.
Yeah. Well, actually, no, the smaller version.
Oh, the smaller version.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the red one.
Yeah.
But I was on chapter 18 and I came across this passage where it's talking about doership, experienship, that kind of thing. And there was this passion, I don't know if I'm going to say it right, but it was somewhere along the lines that like, don't try to be like all holy if that's not your nature, because you know, Ishvara is what's causing everything to happen anyway. And, you know, because that's when Arjuna was saying, I don't want to kill these people. And he's like, well, if you're a killer, you should kill these people. You know, so I was kind of like that kind of gave me pause with everything that I read. I was wondering if you expound on that.
Where is there a question or you just want me to talk on that?
The question was I guess I was confused by the passage of, you know, the idea that we're supposed to be doing dharmic things, but if that's not, quote, our nature, then we're actually going against, you know, what's supposed to happen.
No. Killing was a dharma. It's not adharmic to you know, see, like you cannot, like see, it's like there is a story about the executioner. You know, this was in times where people used to be hung. And so the executioner in this story approaches, you know, he's even afraid to go to a temple because he says, I kill so many people a day. But then he gets a dream in which I think Vishnu or Shiva, somebody comes in his dream and says, you are doing, you know, a wonderful job. And even in this ghora karma, in this horrible karma that you are supposed to do, that you are actually bringing peace to the society. You see, it's not a wrong thing, and this is your job. This is the way you are, gaining your livelihood, and you're doing this properly. So he was actually felicitated and, you know, given some confidence by Bhagavan. And so that is one thing. But that doesn't mean that every pickpocket is doing a good job. Why? Because he's relieving me of, you know, my belongings. And if he or she is relieving me of my belongings, I'm getting vairagya. And so I'm getting, this passion so I can proceed with my Vedanta studies. That's not the idea. The pickpocket should not think that. I should think that, you see. So if supposing, I am robbed, I should think that. That is where my self-growth lies. I should think like that. But if the pickpocket starts to think, robbing hood, not Robin Hood, robbing hood. I'm going to rob so that I'm going to make everybody ready for moksha, because if they don't have possessions, they are going to go immediately in search of gurus because, all their things are, that is not the correct thing. So dharma here is defined into three. It's not, samanya dharma, do not kill, yes, but then there is swadharma. That swadharma means one's own dharma, what one has to do in this life, and kshatriya means you're a soldier. And if you don't want to kill, don't enlist really, in a certain sense, don't enlist. This is what Arjuna is told, not just in the 18th chapter, everywhere, throughout. Because you wanted the war. He was so bloodthirsty, he made a promise to his wife that, I will kill this fellow who dishonored you in the Mahabharata. There is a very poignant scene where they sell her off, even though she's not to be sold, over a game of dice. And then the Kauravas, Dushasana, actually his name was Sushasana, but it was changed. Dushasana means badly behaved. So, Sushasana means well behaved. So, in fact, we enacted this right in the next room. Do you remember that? Yeah.
So this fellow started to drag her and, disrobe her from Draupadi, from her sari, and she said 5 husbands and each one is sitting there, not one, each one is sitting there eating bananas, not one is ready to save me. What is this? Then she pleads to Krishna. So you see, and to avenge that insult, Arjuna says, I and Bhima, they all make a vow, because Draupadi is so upset with them. She's not talking to them, because none of them were there to save her. And she also says, I'm not going to comb my hair until I have Dushasana's blood with which to anoint my hair. This is how they talked. This is the Kshatriya language. They were into name, into preserving their name, into defending their name, and also into defending other people. This is the job of the Kshatriya in the like a soldier. So they wanted to avenge that insult, and Arjuna was so bloodthirsty, he couldn't wait for those years of 14 years of whatever that, 13 years of living in the forest exile, after which they could fight. He was very much into the fight. But then he started to have weak knees when he saw who he had to fight against. So he was not opposed to the fight. You cannot call him a pacifist. It was who he had to fight against, me people, my friends, my frenemies. This is a new category. Friends who behave like enemies. That is where the sadness came. Not because he had to kill people. He was ready to dispatch of anyone. Yeah. And that is what Krishna picks up on. He says, don't think you are doing it, because they will get their just deserts. You be an instrument. Yeah. Any other question?
Yeah. I'm confused about, you were talking about Maya in one place. You said Maya equips Brahman with this ability to do things, and I guess my question is, I thought, to me it sounds like it makes Maya bigger than Brahman. I know that's not what you meant.
No, it doesn't make it bigger. It's a humorous way to understand. Maya cannot be bigger than Brahman. Nothing is bigger than Brahman. Maya itself is a offshoot of Brahman, and as though offshoot. So it's almost like Brahman, creates Maya in a certain way, and then what? Goes to the invisible Maya tailoring shop. That's all it is. It's a mithya. So it's fun. It's all just, it's not bigger. Maya is all knowledge. Maya is non-separate from Brahman.
It's also a status.
It's a status. Yeah, it's a status. It gives, Maya is that which gives Brahman the status of Ishvara, gives Brahman the status of being a hopeless, hapless, helpless jiva, full of peeves. Should be called Piva. Yes.
Somewhat humorously, the mind thought when you were talking about the costume with which Maya has robed Ishvara and Jiva, that thought being that there is really only one suit of clothes, but it's like a reversible jacket.
Yeah, it could be. You can take it as a reversible jacket. With knowledge, you shine. Without knowledge, you are in tatters. Yeah, it could be a reversible jacket. And that's why you have to praise the seamstress. What a fine job she does. What a spoof. Yeah. The glory is under the tatters. Yes, I like that. Yes.
Well, with knowledge then, does one see oneself as Ishvara?
Yes, even now you are Ishvara. With knowledge also you are Ishvara. So you see yourself as Ishvara, the certain differences will remain. It's in the sense that you are not going to be all, you won't be all knowing in the sense of suddenly knowing Chinese and having the ability to fly and do all those things. Because why? That Ishvara is residing in a body-mind-sense complex that started with ignorance and has limited capacities, is subject to aging, subject to the 6, what are they called? Vikaras, starting with birth, and subject to destruction. So as long as one is in this body, one is a jiva in a limping body, in a never mind mind, and And then in the senseless senses, but it's still Ishvara. And that is where that is where the change happens. You can't wait for the body to improve. Body is not going to improve. Yeah. And you certainly cannot wait for the mind to improve. Because if you say, I want the mind to improve, what was I thinking? What was that? That will be the next thought. Can't wait for things to improve. You have to get rid of that which is that placeholder, which is avidya, which makes me think that the body, the mind and the senses are as good as me. I'm not just the body, mind, senses, But even if the body behaves in funny ways, it's not, let it behave. I have to cultivate first that little space to see that. And then that space has to grow to not judge myself in relation to that. That's growth. And then that space grows even further, then I say, I'm not that. Yeah. So one is enlightened enough to occupy a complaining body, a non-existent mind, and senses. Yeah. Okay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Some